Hey everybody, thank you for joining me for Teen Crafternoon. So I want to start off by saying there won't be a video for all of the Crafternoons. A lot of them will be pretty self-explanatory. I'll have instructions with some, but this one is just a little hard to express in words, and it's hard to put down on paper what you're supposed to do. It's not that the craft itself is difficult, it's just kind of really hard to explain in a piece of paper. So today we are going to make a 3D star. And I've found some old comic books that I had that I don't read anymore. And in your packet, or if you didn't have a packet, you can do this at home. This is really easy to do. All you need is 6 pieces of paper that are a perfect square. So it has to be the same length and width. So I think these are 4.5 by 4.5. You can make these really big, you can make these really small. It just has to be a square, so it has to be the same length and width. So if you have a packet, there's 6 pieces of paper in here. If not, just cut 6 pieces of paper that are the same size. And then also, this is a step that you don't necessarily have to take, but I'm putting a string on it so we can hang it up later. So the only thing that you really need for this craft is tape, scissors, and if you're going to put the string on it, either a pencil or a hole punch. So I have already pre-cut all of my tape. I don't know if you can see it, but I have little tiny pieces of tape that I've cut. So I just took a piece of tape out and I cut it. So it's just basically, I just took a piece of tape and I just cut a little strip off. And that's all I did. And I did that 24 times because I have 6 pieces of paper, and each piece of paper has is going to need 4 pieces of tape. So, like I said, it's pretty easy to do. It's just hard to kind of explain. There are some things that could go horribly wrong if you try to do it too quickly or if you're not paying attention. So I'm going to show you how to do this. So you're going to take your paper, you're going to fold it across point to point, so you end up with a triangle, and then you're going to go point to point again. So you end up with what looks like a little tabletop football. Okay? So this is where things can go wrong. If we start making our cuts wrong here, the whole thing is ruined and you just have to cut another piece of paper. Once you cut wrong, you can't use that paper anymore. So the important thing to remember is you've got one side that kind of opens up. That's the side you want to make sure is pointing down, and you want to make sure that this kind of arrow is pointing kind of horizontally. So you've got your little kind of flat part on the bottom. Okay? So we are going to make 3 cuts. So about between 1/2 inch and 1 inch. We're going to make a cut, and we're not going to go all the way through. We're going to go pretty close to the top without going through. And remember, you got to have the opening part down. And then we're going to go over about 1/2 inch, and we're going to make another cut. Again, not all the way through. And then we're going to come over about another 1/2 inch. So, we're going to unfold this. When you open it up, you're going to have what kind of looks like fish gills. Okay? Okay. So, this is the part that gets a little tricky. It's not tricky, it's just kind of hard to explain. So, you're going to take the inside point. So, you've got 4 kind of pieces that are kind of cut into square shapes at this point. So we're going to go and take our inside square, and we're going to roll it. We're going to try to roll it. Point to point. And then you're just going to take a little piece of tape, and you're going to put it on there. Okay? So now we've got our first roll. Now we're going to turn the whole thing over, and we're going to go on the other side. So these are going to alternate side to side. So we're going to take our points, kind of come in, and you kind of want to make this point make the edge. bit of tape. I lost my tape. All right, try this again. All right, tape on there. Okay, so now we've got a loop on this side and a loop on this side. So now we're going to turn it over. Another piece of tape. Turn it over. Another piece of tape. So that's why I recommend you cut the tape ahead of time. It's really hard because you're kind of holding this with both hands. If you have the tape cut ahead of time, it's just kind of makes it a lot easier. So what you should end up with is kind of this little spirally, which is pretty on its own. You could kind of make a little decoration out of that. You could kind of hang that if you wanted to. But we're going to make 5 more of these. So I'm going to do one more. We'll walk you through it. So again, you go point to point. And then point to point again. Alright, and we've got our opening on the bottom, and we've got our point going horizontal. And we're going to cut just underneath that point, up towards the crease, but not all the way through. Okay? One more cut. Up to the crease, but not all the way through. And one last cut. Now if you wanted to, you can make these really intricate. You could make 6 cuts here if you really wanted to, and it would look even more intricate. It just gets a little more fragile as you make them smaller, so I like to go with 3, but I have in the past gone with 4. Okay, so we're going to unfold it. We're going to find our inside square again. Fold it in. Alright, there's our first loop. Flip it over. Tape. Flip it over. Tape. Flip it over. Tape. Okay, so now we've got 2 of our little spirals, okay? So we've got to do 4 more of these. So I'm going to do those real quick, and I'll show you what we do once we get them all done. So let's finish the last 4. Okay, so we've got our 6 spirals all made up. Now, if you have a stapler at home, this stapler would be easier. You can use tape if you want to. A stapler is just a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier. So I'm going to use a stapler, but if you don't have a stapler, that's fine. You can just use tape. So we're going to start by taking 3 of our little spirals, and we're going to put kind of the tip tops together, just flat against one another. And that will give us something that looks a little bit like that. So if you wanted to, you could just kind of tape the outside here, but if you have a stapler, go ahead and staple that, and that will kind of put it all together. Okay, so I can let go of the middle and it holds together. So we're going to do the same thing With the other three, we're going to take our points and we're going to lay them flat on top of each other. And again, if you wanted to, you could just tape around the edge here, or if you have a stapler, staple. So now we have two sides that we have to get together. So we're going to put the two triangular tips that we just stapled, and we're going to put those together. So if you wanted to, you could run tape around the outside, but again, if you have a stapler, go ahead and use the stapler. And don't staple your finger because it hurts. Okay, so now we have our star. If you wanted to, you could leave it like this. It doesn't have to be really anything done more to this. I like to make it a little sturdier, so I use a few more staples. Again, you could use tape. Tape would be a little more difficult with this. You just need a smaller piece. So this part is a little tricky to describe as well. So you've got two different spirals, right? So we're going to put them together, and where they connect, we're just going to put a staple in here. So you'll notice that that stays together a little bit more. So where it kind of is a little floppy on this side, this just makes it a little sturdier. So again, this doesn't need to be done. It's just an extra step if you want it to be a little sturdier. So we're going to go around the whole outside and basically just kind of pull them together where the X's are. I staple right on the X, and you'll see the X's when you put them together. And X marks the spot. Alright, and we have made a 3D star or snowflake out of recycled comic books. So like I said, you can use this pretty much any paper will do. Origami paper is good. You can use this. I've used really old books. That looks really cool. You can pretty much whatever you really want to use for it, you can use, as long as it's a perfect square and you make your cuts right. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for joining me for Crafternoon, and we will see you next month.